Hello, everyone. I am Geneviève O'Siodhchain. I am the Deputy Registrar for the University of Atlantia and also the Instructor Spotlight Coordinator. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Today, we are doing a presentation on the university, her past, present, and future, so where we're going. And with that, I am going to pass it on to our extremely capable Chancellor, Dame Deirdre O'Siodhchain, past and present present chancellor. And we will let her take it from here with her wonderful presentation.
Well, thank you, Geneviève. I'm very pleased to be here with you this evening. I hope that the information I'm going to review about the history of the University of Atlantia and our plans going forward is interesting to you. If you have any questions during the presentation, just type them in the chat area. And when we have a natural break, Geneviève will pass them on to me. And with that, let us begin. If I can get it to share. So, as I said, we're going to be talking about the University of Atlantia, our past, present, and future. We are on the eve of our 45th anniversary year, and I'm just so excited that I will be chancellor during that time, and we will have an opportunity to celebrate both the contributions of the university and its participants. This seems like a good time to reflect on the origins of the university and how it developed over the years, and just some of the characters who have helped make it what it is. In late 1979 or early 1980, there was what was the Shire of Marinus in the Principality of Atlantia. This was before Atlantia was a kingdom. In the Shire, there was a group of friends. I have done my best to try and figure out who actually was in this circle of friends, but memories have become blunted over the years. However, there is one individual whose name is Ioannis Nikaias, who was definitely one of the founding members of the University of Atlantia. And from him, I have learned that around that time, a group of the friends there were thinking about, well, let's have an event. And they thought, well, we want to do something a little different. There's feasting and there's fighting, but we want to do something a little different. And Ioannis is one of those people who is very interested in the learning of the Middle Ages, the life of the universities of the major cities in Europe. And so he suggested that because there wasn't as much support for the arts and sciences, then they would have a University of Atlantia. And everybody seemed to think this was a pretty good idea. So they all agreed, and and an event was held. Okay, sorry, I am having a minor technical difficulty. Okay, so all right, now I asked you to cast your mind back. This is before many people were in the SCA now are around. It was 45 years ago. These were the days before email and the internet. When we wanted to hold events, we had to call people up on the phone, write letters, and things like, preparing an event announcement required that we actually drive through the directions, write everything down, and prepare them for publication. there was very little ability to let people know what was going on last minute. You had to prepare months in advance. And that information had to be ready to go into the newsletter, The Acorn, which of course was a paper publication that went out bulk mail once a month. So it was a lot of work to prepare one of these things. And that remained the case for a long, long time. In any case, the very first university had 4 students and 12 instructors. This is a little bit weird, but of course, there was a tremendous amount of overlap between the people who were teaching and the people who were taking classes. But clearly, there was a lot of determination to keep it going. I have recently learned that, in fact, the prince at the time was one Ragnar, and he was one of the people who loved the idea of the university and wanted it to succeed. So Prince Ragnar Thorvaldsson asked him to continue, and he asked Elena de Sinister to be the first chancellor. Now, she was an import from the West Kingdom and had worked with their university out there, so she had some experience. In any case, he and Gwelion, his princess, granted a royal charter to the University of Atlantia. And this was on the 12th day of April in the year 1980. Now you will see this followed closely upon the first session. The first session did not have a chancellor, but the second session did, and that was Elena. And interestingly, we predate the founding of Atlantia as a kingdom, but our charter has been confirmed by a number of crowns in the years since. The second University of Atlantia was held in June 1980 in the barony of Storbeck, and it had 60 students and 10 instructors. This was really a pretty big event for the time, and it became very much part of the regular Atlantean event calendar pretty quickly. The fact that we've been around for 45 years, I think, is a testament to the ideas that went into the earliest universities. And from my point of view, there are 3 principles that have ensured the university's success. First, we run on donations. We're not an event in the sense other kingdom events are. The idea was, at the time, many of us were just starting on our careers or poor students or whatever. So the idea was that anyone who wanted to come and learn could. So we ran on donations. That the university would rotate throughout the kingdom, so everyone had a chance to attend at one time or another. The university wasn't a local thing. It was meant to be a resource for the kingdom. And the third thing is that the university has always been a very independent institution. It isn't about titles, rank, hierarchies. It is about people coming together to teach and to learn. And I think we've maintained that character throughout our life. As I said, the first chancellor of the university was Elena de Sinister. She was one of the longer serving ones. The second chancellor was Elizabeth Beaufort. Now, Elizabeth Beaufort is the one to whom we owe the fact that the university has the huge database going back to the very first session. She kept records for the entire time she was involved with the university, and that was from the first session. Her contribution to that cannot be overstated. The third chancellor was Philip of Ghent. And at the time Philip became chancellor, Elizabeth became the registrar. So that was the first time we actually had an official registrar for signing people up for classes and such. Because the university has complete records, we are able to offer degrees based on people's attendance. I haven't actually been able to find out whose idea it was that we would have degrees in the first place, but the most likely candidate is Elena de Sinister. Elizabeth Beaufort said she didn't do it. Philip of Ghent said he didn't do it. And the widow of the following chancellor said that she is absolutely sure he didn't do it. But the degrees were there in the first place. So by default, it has to have been Elena who established this. Degrees remain one of the most popular things that we do. People love knowing that we see their participation and that they have a yardstick to measure that by. So as you can see, from its inception, the university had a pretty steadily increasing attendance. You're going to see some variation there because of the fact that the university rotated throughout the kingdom, which means that it went to more or less populated areas. So in-person attendance varied. But the fact of the matter is, it was steadily attended and with increasing attendance trending over time. So after those first three chancellors, we kind of entered what I think of as the middle years. This is when Gert Oldcastle took over as chancellor. Gert passed away quite some years ago, but he was a tremendously dynamic man and with one of the most keen intellects I have ever met. When he took over as chancellor, he really made an effort to promote the university, not just as an A&S event, but to teach other topics. This is when universities started gaining more classes on heraldry or the martial arts or on officer training. So the expansion of university in terms of the classes held is very much a matter of Gert deciding that he wanted to do that. He was also a very scholarly man, knowing both Greek and Latin and many things of interest. He was also a fine poet. He introduced one of the first sort of specialized tracks of learning that was done at the university. This was the study of the trivium and quadrivium, which are traditional medieval topics to study. And he kept a record of the people who did this, and they are noted among the university's accomplishments. But these are topics that are sometimes hard to find teachers for. So it kind of died off after a few years, but it was in fact the first attempt to do something very specific in terms of a track of particular classes. It was under Gert that we acquired the honorary doctorates. And those were intended to be a reward or acknowledgement to former chancellors, which it was, but university was so popular and had so many people who were working to make it a success that was eventually expanded. Another thing about the tracks was that they created the idea of having deans who were basically people responsible for a track of classes at a single university. But then the idea expanded that we would have deans who would be in charge of colleges who would, from university to university, offer tracks on particular topics. The two that I remember, partly because I was involved in them, was we had the College of St. Catherine of Alexandria, which was for women's studies. We participated in 5 or 6 different sessions as the college. And then there were a group of attorneys who were interested in medieval law, and they created the Inn of St. Ivo, and St. Ivo being the patron saint of lawyers. So they also were around for 5 or 6 years. Up to around that time, university had been pretty much strictly a day of registration event in terms of you show up, you sign up for classes, and you take them. But in fact, it was my very first session when I was chancellor the first time that we almost doubled our attendance. We had nearly 400 people show up, and it was overwhelming to the people trying to run the registration table. We got through the day, but it was at that point we decided, yes, we need pre-registration for classes. We developed a system to do it by mail. It was unsophisticated compared to what we're doing now. But at that time, we were still doing the catalog in paper via the Acorn. We weren't really a very sophisticated operation. During that time, it was basically the chancellor, the registrar, and working with whoever was our host site. So these were the chancellors at the time. While I was chancellor, Elizabeth Beaufort stepped down as registrar, and then Theora Arnskittle's daughter stepped up. She was registrar for many years. It is interesting to note that while we have had 16 chancellors of the university, we've only had 4 registrars. So we have had a consistency there that has also contributed to our success. And during those years, you can see we gained steadily in attendance. We regularly had 350 people showing up at university. And it was an incredibly productive time for the whole university community. And then, in the 1990s, things like home computing, desktop publishing, email, the whole internet as a tool, as a home tool, was really coming into its own. This changed how university was run in a number of places. There was a big expansion of the university database to take advantage of some of these things. It became possible to start registering for classes online. We were able to put out catalogs with less lead time, but really university stayed pretty much the same during this time. We continued to have sessions 200 to 300 people. It was pretty central to the Kingdom calendar. And in these years, these were our chancellors: Eldred Elfwald, Geneviève d'Aquitaine, and there was Lisette Leroux, and then Geneviève became our registrar then. And then we had Adriana Le Breton starting in session 98, but then the pandemic hit. Adriana was still chancellor in early 2020. And after the in-person session in February 2020, we all know what happened. The severity of the pandemic became apparent. In-person activity was shut down. And we had no clear idea of when we were going to be able to get together again. As I noted before, for a long time, the university was essentially the chancellor and the registrar running things. And that lasted for about 25 years. And then we got someone to do a database, and that person was part of the university, but really the work was still largely the matter of the chancellor and the registrar. But then Adriana, Geneviève, and our then web minister, Drea de Pellegrini, took on the heroic task of turning the university into an online event. And they made it up as they went along. They drew on all their institutional knowledge about the university. They called in everyone they knew who had the skills they needed, and they brought it all together and made it work. It was an amazing feat. It really was. It did result in a massive expansion of staff positions to support teachers and students. And there was a certain amount of juggling as people learned what those roles should be. Another thing that happened here was, for many years, the university had been offering student credit to educational SEA educational events outside of the university setting. But all of a sudden, all educational events were outside the in-person setting. So there were efforts made to ensure that the people who were teaching out there were getting a chance to remain part of the university community. And it was an amazing time in terms of the energy people brought to continuing to teach, continuing to maintain the arts and sciences, and to ensuring that people stayed in touch. University played its part in that. The university added things like its YouTube channel to try and record classes and get them out to people. Some of the chaos of those years shows in the fact that some of the material has been lost, but as much as could reasonably preserved has been preserved. The university was fully online for sessions 104 to 107. And these sessions brought in students and instructors from around the whole known world. I've gone over the statistics for it, and it's just amazing the number of people who discovered the University of Atlantia during the pandemic years and are now part of our community. We regularly have teachers and students from every kingdom. And I'll note that at session 106, we actually had at least one person from every kingdom as a student or instructor. So that was really a big accomplishment, I think. Online sessions face the problem of trying to coordinate across time zones, video conferencing platforms, and people have varying levels of comfort with technology. And many people came in and used it out of pure necessity. So this was something that was really a challenge for the university staff, and they rose to it. Online university became a day-long Zoom space that directed students to the right links and provided support to the patchwork of instructor points of access. So every instructor had to provide their Zoom link or Google Meet link or whatever. This worked okay as long as the sharing platforms had their COVID policies in place, such as Zoom would allow you a full hour for free, but they cut that back to 40 minutes. And after the pandemic eased up, so a new challenge presented itself in that a lot of people don't have professional video conferencing access. So we have to learn and work from that. The other big thing that we discovered during the pandemic years was that there is a whole audience out there who was previously underserved. We discovered that there are many, many people out there who, for whatever reason, cannot travel to in-person events. These may be family commitments, they may be health problems, whatever. Or it may simply be the expense of going to university. And while originally online university wasn't intended to be a permanent thing, the outcry at the thought that people would lose their access to university was loud. So, decisions had to be made. And while university is no longer the relatively intimate staff that it used to be. And we also had to think about things like, was one day enough anymore? The other thing we discovered is that many people can't get to a Saturday university, but they really wanted classes on Sunday. So online university was expanded to be a full weekend. And then when in-person sessions resumed, the decision was made to do what we call hybrid sessions, that Saturdays would be in person and Sunday would be online for the summer and fall sessions. But given that the winter session was not infrequently interrupted by severe weather conditions, we decided to retain university as a fully online for the winter session. So this is what the university staff now looks like. We are not just a chancellor and a registrar. We have deputies who are training to take up our positions. Early on, a chancellor basically was a chancellor for 2, 3, 4 years, however long they wanted to do it. Then it got more formalized to about 2-year terms. Originally, the chancellor of the university was not a kingdom officer. It was just somebody who was running the university. Then it kind of became part of the regular business structure of the kingdom. And the idea of 2-year terms with renewable options became more common, but it was still the chancellor and registrar. The registrar, not being official kingdom officer, tended to just stay around. Most registrars seem to enjoy the work, and it's a great opportunity to really get to know a lot of people. Anyway, we now have, deputies for most of the positions. We have added functions like our online support coordinator, who basically runs our Zoom room, who takes time to work with people who are less tech savvy and helping them to work with their video platforms and be more comfortable with the whole process. We have an instructor support coordinator who is in charge of working with our instructors to make sure they have the resources they need. If it's in person, if you need a projector, if it's a hands-on class and you need water in the room or something like that. Those are the kinds of things our support coordinator will help with. We have a teaching assistant coordinator. I will note that the introduction of teaching assistants, because instructors, especially if it's a crowded classroom, can't always keep an eye on what's going on. So we have teaching assistants there to do things like take attendance, monitor the chat for questions, to broadly help keep things on track so the instructor can concentrate on teaching. We have our external communications lead, who prepares all those wonderful things that you see in the Atlantia and Mary Rose Facebook feeds, who make sure that everyone knows what's going on when, what the deadlines are, and does a wonderful job of it. And we also have our video resources coordinator, who is the one in charge of maintaining our YouTube channel and seeking out content. She is also a designer of many of the spikes you see. And we have just recently added our bursar, who is the person in charge of our bookstore and our goodies like t-shirts and notebooks and all those things that help support the university. By the way, for teaching assistants, we now have a new certificate. It's called a Wrangler. If you are a teaching assistant at 3 classes, you become a Wrangler. And yes, Wrangler is a medieval term used at universities for people who organize things. Because so much is now online, and in fact, we have so many people who get degrees, we now issue the certificates in a PDF and email them to people, unless you're going to be there in person, in which case we will print one out for you and give it to you. But you've got to pre-register so we know we're there.
Quick correction, Deirdre. Sorry, I did not catch this earlier. The Wranglers are for 3 sessions, not for 3 individual classes, 3 sessions.
Thank you. Okay, so and online universities have had a theme. Many of them have been very nice, like the Silk Road or whatever. The idea being to encourage people to get inspired about what they might want to teach at a university. And in our 45th year, our theme is going to be the natural world, animal, vegetable, mineral. That covers a lot of ground. But for our winter session, our theme is going to be the known world. And we are going to make an effort to celebrate the participation of students and instructors from throughout the SCA. We're very proud of what has been accomplished over the recent years. And the profile of the University of Atlantia throughout the known world has really risen. And I think it is not an exaggeration to say we are probably the best university in the SCA. Okay, so as I noted, Adriana was the first to take the brunt of the pandemic. Kilmeny did a great job bringing us out of the pandemic and back into the in-person sessions. It was a matter of getting the ball rolling again, getting some momentum going again. People were hesitant to come back out, and she did a great job of encouraging it to start up again. And the 16th chancellor is me, Deirdre O'Siodhchain, to the present. And so this is what attendance has looked like. Now, you will see the red is the online only sessions. And clearly, especially during the pandemic, that brought it in. But at the height of the pandemic, we had nearly 1,000 people at one of our sessions. It was pretty impressive. So looking ahead, as the pandemic receded, the university staff is still committed to bringing the best possible experience to everyone who comes to us. We have an awesome web minister, and he and his deputies are working to ensure that our online portal is functioning. And we have some ideas about refinements and enhancements on that. They are working in the background. I am exceedingly grateful for all their help. These are people who are professionals and are generous in volunteering their time and resources to us, and we could not do it without them. The other big thing that has happened is we have now switched to what we call a Great Hall format, whereas we sponsor one large Zoom room and classes are assigned to breakout rooms off that Great Hall, unless the instructor has a particular platform they want to use. This has helped minimize a lot of confusion about getting to classes, because what was happening is people were in the Zoom room, they had to leave the Zoom room to go to the class, and then they would have to come back to the Zoom room as they needed more information. It was not particularly convenient. We like the Great Hall. We're going to continue with that format for the time being. And among the challenges ahead, the cost for hosting university have risen significantly. I think almost anyone who is doing events now is facing the problem of fewer facilities are willing to rent out than they used to be for a variety of reasons. And when they are renting out, they are significantly more expensive than they were prior to the pandemic. But the university is committed to maintaining its policy of being funded by donations and free to those who cannot afford otherwise. Because donations at the door don't always cover it, we're extending our fundraising efforts for things like our bookstore sales, where we have a variety of merchandise. Some of it's online, some of it is physical inventory available at events. We were going to be developing our products for 2025, and there will be announcements out about that. I will remind that the university wants to rotate throughout the kingdom. The difficulty in finding sites means that there's this tendency to go back to known sites. We don't want to do that. We want to go everywhere in the kingdom. We have fairly recently been up in the northern reaches at the Barony of Bright Hills. Our last in-person university, we were all the way south. And it really is important to us that we get to all parts of the kingdom. It's also in our charter, by the way. The costs for attending university have also risen sharply since the pandemic. People are finding it more difficult to get to events. It's something, there's not much we can do about it, but we are going to make an effort to make sure that university is well worth attending. We are going to try to encourage more hands-on in classes, things that, you can do a classroom setting online reasonably well, but things like lace making, bead making, any kind of hard craft, we're going to try and do more of those type of workshop programs so that people can come to university and feel productive. We are allowing longer than our traditional 1 or 2 hour classes to try and accommodate this. We're also considering bringing in special guest instructors. This can be someone from anywhere that we feel is particularly interesting. Cat. Sorry. So anyway, we are trying to make sure that if you're coming to university, you have a positive experience. The thought is, say, if university is in Marinus or Tiradon, we could invite someone from the Jamestown settlement to come talk to us. Or we can find notable practitioners of an art or someone in a fighting community would love to come in and do workshops. So we are open to ideas and suggestions, and it's one of the things we look forward to trying to do in the coming year.
So while I
And-
know that we're looking for an answer in the chat, but Maxon has asked if there's a published description of what the university needs and a site. And since this is going to be recorded on our YouTube channel, I figured we would talk about what we are looking for in a site while we look for the link that we can add to the
Okay,
chat.
well, and a site, we can work with a variety of sites, but a classic university site is a facility with 10 to 15 classrooms and a large common area. And hopefully with either like a gym or an outside space where we can hold things like rapier classes. We can work within a lot of variation. We have held outdoor universities. There have been ones at campsites where there are cabins and the dining hall and things like, archery ranges. And so we can be very creative with what's available to us. And, if we know far enough in advance, we can recruit instructors based on the facilities available. So I look at the website to get some ideas, but if you see a site and you think it has possibilities, get in touch with us. We will be happy to talk about it. The other thing is that the university has funds, and if a smaller group feels that they would take a loss on holding the event, they should still contact us, because the donations over time that we receive are intended to hold universities. And I'm not saying we would take a huge loss, but we are there to help subsidize the costs of the event. And in fact, the university is a very easy event to run compared to many, because we come in with the registration, the catalogs, we recruit the teachers, we take care of most of the work, and it's basically just making sure that the site is open and ready for us when we come in. So do get in touch with us.
And for those who are looking on our website, under our frequently asked questions, under all universities, we have the last question has our hosting guidelines. So you can figure out what we would ideally like, but as Deirdre says, the university has been flexible with a whole lot of options of sites.
Yes. Yes, indeed. And mostly for my final thought, I'm just so grateful that over the years, my first involvement with university was back in 1985. And over the years, I have seen just the dedication of the people who work to make university happen, but also of the students and instructors who come back session after session after session and make it such a wonderful community to deal with. And with that, I'm going to stop my share and hope I did not bore you too much. Are there any questions?
There was one comment from Kilmeny earlier on in the chat when you were talking about the very first session, about how Mistress Tanis of Tiradon was one of the instructors at the very first session, and how she was actually honored at the 100th session with an honorary doctorate to sort of bookend her participation at the beginning and her participation at the 100th.
Yeah. So I think we are really part of the life of Atlantia. And I am truly honored to be its chancellor for the second time.
My first kingdom level event was a university, and it was the one you stepped up at.
You're kidding.
So,
Whoa.
I mean, because I
I'm
wasn't.
surprised you remember that.
Well, because everyone tormented Henry Best as he stepped down, so it was very memorable.
Yeah.
It was very impressive to someone who was a student, and I was like, I don't know if I want to go to classes all day on my day off too. And then I had the best time and got to sing in a choir and, got to take all these different classes. And I remember helping teach the first class ever offered to female fighters with now Mistress Tegan de Morton, back when we were among the few female heavy fighters in the region, let alone the kingdom. So university is a big part of my journey. It was very interesting to be chancellor, and now my husband's the bursar, and suddenly we're going to 12th night. Um, so it's definitely become a big part of my SCA journey as well, and it's amazing to witness. And yeah,
Well,
Max, please talk to us. We work so hard to help anybody, not just go to university, but to host it. We want to help everybody, and we are really great for first-time autocrats to work with.
yes, indeed.
I think with
Well,
that, let's go ahead and stop the recording. And we can continue the conversation afterwards, but thank you to everyone who came. We really appreciate your participation and your questions and just your being here and coming to the university. And just thank you for being part of the University of Atlantia. Thank you, Deirdre. Thank you, Kilmeny, for also being here.